Finance Minister, thank you very much for your time. Imagine I've never been to Uzbekistan and I know nothing about your reform program. Describe it.
During the course of our history of the last, let's say, 30 years of regaining independence, we have tried to do different reforms. But 5 years ago, when new president, His Excellency Mirziyoyev, came, he have started completely different one with one single goal: to make the life of the people better, to create condition for prosperity. And to do so, he decided to change some policies 180 degrees, which we probably couldn't imagine that it is possible. The difficulties of that is that it requires to change the mindset of the people, of the government officials. And overnight, actually, it's a period that the country completely changed. The biggest change of the mindset is that the people lost the fear of saying about their problems, about their demands openly and freely. And they were allowed to do so. This is, I think, the number one biggest mindset reform which President started from the day one.
That has economic consequences.
Exactly.
Not just political, but that has economic consequences.
Exactly. And the people, the business or entrepreneurs, or the people who is willing to do the business, really lost the fear to do business, to start the business. And that was the starting point. I think this is the biggest change, when business, ordinary people, ordinary family can demand for their basic rights. And actually he created the special institution to make sure they can talk to him directly without any barriers. So in each region he opened the presidential offices where anybody can come to this office and tell about any problem. And staff there will write it on the computer, and everything aggregated here in the capital. And those offices directly report to the president office. So no local governor, no government can intervene. So on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, on a daily basis, monthly basis, he has all the statistics, what the people complaining most, what the people demanding most. So he has this big data on all the problems from the places. And it worked. It really worked. The biggest change is that it was okay to admit that after a quarter century, maybe at that time it was right, but the results was not as positive. And it's allowed policymakers to completely rethink the economic policy. Let's say moving from the protectionism to open the market, moving from tight state control in every area to actually allowing any type of the business, local private business, foreign private business, to enter the market, and actually hearing from them why they cannot enter those markets, what kind of problems we have, and where we have to start reforms. And that's why if you look purely on the economic reforms, we have started the most difficult with the currency exchange liberalization and with the tax reforms. Because the currency regulation was part of this protectionism. There was the idea that we have lots of resources, so we are able, or we have to produce everything we need by ourselves at any cost. And to do so, even the currency policy was a kind of part of this protection system, which would not allow to import certain goods to make sure that it will be profitable to produce in-house. And it creates lots of distortions. And the intervention of the government to the currency rate itself create more distortions. And whenever we create obstacle, people find lots of creative ways to overcome those restrictions, and you end up you're having problems not only with the foreign currency control, and then you end up that you have a problem with your local currency. When now businesses, in order to do business, they buy on the black market. So to buy on the black market, they need to have cash. So they just starting operate out of the banking system. And it's created the parallel economy, this gray or unofficial part of the economy, which became very big. And then businesses suddenly do not have their money in the bank account, so you run a shortage of your local currency. And when the ordinary people come to withdraw their local currency, actually banks cannot provide those currency. And so one kind of restrictions in one area create distortion overall in the economy. And another was the tax system. It has a very high burden overall on the business, and it created actually the wrong incentives. So with the idea kind of promoting the small businesses, the taxation system was built in a way that actually businesses didn't want to grow. Because if you move from the small size to a slightly bigger size, it suddenly became very unprofitable. You have a higher taxes then. We eliminated this tax on turnover. So we introduced it VAT. So we started with 20% rate, then we reduced it to 15. Now recently the president announced that we will reduce to 12 starting from the next year. We have income tax 15%. If you compare to many countries, this is normal. I mean corporate income tax 15%. We have tax on dividends. If you take your dividends, just 5%. I consider it very low.
Certainly lower than in the UK.
Yeah. And personal income tax for individuals, it's currently flat at 12%. There is a lot of arguments that we need progressive tax system, but in our situation, when in most businesses, I mean in the private sector, they used to get the salaries in the envelope, an official one. I think for this period of time, this flat system is more kind of easy to understand to everybody. And we want the tax system to be easy for the business to handle, to work with. So with decreasing the tax rate, we actually started to get more revenue from the tax collection because everybody had to pay. And they was ready to pay. Since there is no problem with convertibility, there is no problem with getting cash from your account at any time, and the tax burden is normal, is not big. More and more businesses were ready to work officially. The biggest issue is the overall state presence in the economy. From one side, this is a fiscal cost for the budget. It is costly. Well, it is in most cases, in many countries, the state-run business is always less efficient than the private one. No doubt. That's why it's always costly for the budget. But the most difficult, the second point of this is that since the government owns this business, this is natural as a stakeholder, trying to always support, to protect with different ways which you have, and always government have more power than any other body in any country. And intuitively, by no intention or by having intention, the government always create some specific condition for their own company, which they have some tax exemptions, they have kind of more resources at the lower than market price, so subsidizing from the budget, etc., etc. So the situation creates the market where the private business, even though they can do the same business which this state-owned company do, but it's already from the day one, it's not plausible to do business because they have a different condition to do, unfair one. And this creates actually a situation where you can say, well, we do not have monopoly on this area, anybody can do the same business, but if the state-run company have all these preferences, nobody will do business in this area. And it creates this vicious circle when now there is no competition for this company, no need to think about efficiency. At any time we can go to stakeholder, to parents, and ask for more and more money. Problem is that it's a job creation, because it's obvious that the government with all their SOEs cannot provide with the jobs all the country. So this is only the private sector who always create jobs in the market. So the third part of the reforms is that transformation of the state-owned enterprises in a way, first of all, to decide how many of them, which of them we really need for whatever reasons. Maybe there is some market failure we need, or whether it is natural monopoly, so you cannot have second company in this area. It's okay, but what about the rest? Why do we need all the power generation stations? The private ones can do the same. All the capacity which we have of the production is not enough for the current demand. The demand will double for the electricity in our country. Economy is growing, population is growing, but to build those factories, budget does not have enough resources. So there is only way the private sector, and you can see this example in many areas. So now we are at the point after the first 25 years when we were thinking that we have to build all the infrastructure by ourselves, I mean state-owned companies, to a point that we cannot afford to continue to do so. So SOE transformation, and which will end up with the privatization, is probably the biggest agenda. First of all, to reduce this fiscal risk, to leave some fiscal space for the budget to concentrate on the original government functions, to provide social security, to provide overall security, to invest in the human capital, education, healthcare, etc., instead of wasting money on supporting those countless SOEs in a very inefficient way. Another issue is to create a situation when all the investors, local, foreign, will be able to do business and compete with each other. And again, with energy sector, we can show a good example now. We have started process with the support of the IFIs, now focusing on the renewable in this sector, and when we inviting the foreign investor to start the productions on the public-private partnership, when the government as a partner agreed to buy whatever they produce, and the price is defined on the tender. So all the bidders to provide the best price they can, and we choose the lowest price. And surprisingly for us, we have a very good result. Initially, there was a fear, maybe this renewable stuff, green stuff, it's more for the rich country, it's expensive. But I think we are lucky enough that the overall technology now in a stage when allowed actually the prices to be lower for the renewables, for example. And we see the biggest changes even within 1 year in our country. So with last year, the first tender, one investor won a tender by providing price of somewhere around 2.6, 2.7 cents, US cents for per 1 kilowatt of energy. So we were happy. After 1 year, there is already a second tender when the company already winning with the price 1.6 or 1.7 cents. And we had interest of big names participating on these tenders because they like this way, so we do it in a transparent way, is openly kind of tendering it. And they are ready to invest, to build the plant here. And the only they need is this agreement that the government for the next certain period of time, 15 or 20 years, will buy all the products which they produce at this agreed price. And this is fantastic. So they invest, the factory is theirs, business is theirs, and they are guaranteed that all the products they will be able to sell. And we are happy that we will receive those energy resources. The goal is in the next 10 years, so by 2030, in our energy sector, renewables to be around a quarter of overall energy sector. So this is only one example of how reforms, transformation of the SOEs, and overall changing the mindset, how we should operate in the sector actually can bring a lot of value. So we receive the product which we really need for our economy, which we cannot live without it, at a very good price, without spending money, having fiscal room to spend our money for our main policies, and allowing investors to earn the money. So this is a win-win situation. We are not oil-rich country. We do not have this easy money coming just because you have oil or some natural gas in huge amounts. The only way we grow our economy is only private sector, focus on the private sector, and the government only provide level playing field, equal rules for everybody, some infrastructure, some guarantee of their rights, and make sure that they can earn the money. And we're happy that they can earn the money because they create the jobs. This is what we need. We will always need to create the jobs.
In a sentence, the reforms have transformed Uzbekistan from what to what?
Reforms in the past 5 years transformed Uzbekistan from a country where people in business didn't believe anymore the opportunity to do business, now to a country when you on a daily basis see new and new business opening. So people are really willing to do business. They're ready to take some risks because they believe that the government really wants it and they will support it. And the people start to trust the government with the belief that they really will have a better life in their own country.
Describe Uzbekistan's privatization program.
Well, we have close to 3,000 state assets. The number is huge, but most of them are tiny, tiny businesses. So the first plan is to sell very fast 3/4 of them. So we already did the list, what kind of assets we have. And there is certain areas we don't need them. So just put them for auction and sell it, whatever is current price. With the big SOEs, take the natural monopolies where we should focus on, national grid for the electricity grid. You cannot sell it. It's going to end up with the private monopoly, which is not good. But with the generation part of the electricity, first of all, let the new businesses come to the market, which we have already started. They already started to build the business here. And we are even thinking about selling the existing ones and move to the privatization or public-private partnership on the distribution side. And the same in all the areas. Maybe some big, very good companies, maybe 2, not more, in the mining, where we do not plan to sell, but we are ready for the partial IPO because it is an instrument to create efficient company, to have private investors who will have hundreds or thousands additional eyes to make sure that the company will be run efficiently. We have started a bit late with this process. I admit that. It took time. The thinking about holding control of everything and understanding that actually having them in private hands has anything to do with some kind of security or safety, and it's about efficiency and the result. But I'm happy that we have started with political will from the president, who it is COVID era when everybody suddenly kind of decided that we have to, all the country focus on the healthcare and everything can be wait. And he said no. 2020 autumn, he issued a resolution just showing several companies with some deadlines. We have to prepare them for the privatization, and this process has started. And we announced a couple of very good deals on privatization. It's 1, 2, 3 deals, but this is a very big beginning for us. A very good interest from investors, and the process in a proper, in a modern, transparent way showed that we can even have good investors who will come to this business and improve the situation. Secondly, we have good money, but the most important is the trust that people is ready to risk with their assets in our country, and this is what is fantastic. So it gives your energy, you kind of recharge it for the next, let's say, 5 years. Well, we can do it. We have started with couple. Let's do it with the Minister of Finance. The faster we will get rid of inefficient SOEs, the better for us. The better for, first of all, creating jobs. The better for efficiency in those markets. The better for the budget and that.
How does Uzbekistan's privatization program compare to others?
We started so late. Well, comparing to other countries in the region, we really want to catch up. We really want to catch up. This is probably more psychological, but from economic point of view, again, it's about the jobs, 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 and jobs. We have a growing population, more and more people graduating. Each year we have lots of people, young people, and we have to provide jobs.
You need the private sector to create the jobs.
Sure. And it's not about selling one state company. By selling it, by showing to the investor that the government exiting those markets, now they are free to come and do the business and compete. So when I say we want to do it fast, not because we need money, not because we want to get rid of those companies because they are costly, but to show to the investors there is no fear for them that there will be unfair competition from the government side. So when I say to get rid of them fast, is to show to the investors, local, international, that we are leaving those markets, you are free to do this business there. That's why we want to do it fast, and I think we can do it.
What is Uzbekistan trying to achieve when it says inclusive growth?
If you looked in the previous economic policy, if you look at the data, we had a very decent, good period of time, track record, when we had a really good growth. Nobody can deny it. For a decade, we used to have 6-7% of the growth annual. This is very good, but it was not inclusive. So that growth made happy very small part of the population. So now we understand those mistakes. So it's not about the growth, but it's about the inclusive growth. So more people had to get benefit from those growth. So it's about increasing productivity, about increasing efficiency, and creating competitive environment, investing in the human capital to make sure that those young people actually will get basic skills, match to business's demand. We have a very interesting situation when we are focusing on creating businesses. The businesses are opening and there is not enough skilled labor. We have big labor force, we have an unemployment rate, but business cannot find the proper skilled labor. This is something new which we are starting. It will take time. The overall kind of final goal of the government is to make sure that any person who finished the school, graduate from universities, has an opportunity to find a job. and that's it. And doesn't matter what kind of numbers we will see on the papers, on the growth. Yes, of course, without growth, you cannot provide it. But again, don't play with the numbers. So we used to have high growth, but it didn't work. So now it's about the more efficiency, to make sure that we are not playing with the numbers, that we are knowing that those numbers is not the final goal. Final goal is provide the jobs, but the other macroeconomic data is the kind of the basic standards to do so, but not focusing on the numbers.
What did you make of the forum, and what do you think you achieved?
The country had a strategy for these 5 years, and I think it was a good time to see what are results and to discuss with all the partners, investors, current investors, or new investor who is thinking about to invest, with the partners from international financial institutions. We had lots of programs with them, lots of support from their side, to show what we have achieved, to talk about what kind of mistakes probably we have. But most importantly, the next 5 years, we have our plan, we have our view, but we want to hear what others expect. Our achievement is irreversible. So we cannot rest, and if you have achieved something, there is no guarantee that it will stay forever if you will not continue to do some next steps. I'm happy with the results. First of all, with the interest of the different types of companies who came to this forum, despite the still continuing COVID pandemic situation, a lot of travel restriction in many countries, in many companies.
Mm-hmm.
On top of opening panel and the closing panel, we have 14 sessions on different topics. So we discussed about the manufacturing, about public-private partnership, about macroeconomy, banking sector, and we tried to do a new format. So focus on the discussion, no presentation, no speeches, that's the topic. Try to choose panelists, private sector, IFIs, one government official, and moderator, and talking to the audience. And it worked very good, extremely good, when we hear the feedback from the people.
Pretty unusual for Uzbekistan.
Pretty unusual, yeah. We are quite happy. There is so much to discuss about. Transformation of a country of which His Excellency President Mirziyoyev started 5 years ago, created so many achievements in so many reforms. So there is no doubt that we have a good content to talk about. But the format was new. And I'm happy that we get, I think, almost 100% positive feedback from everybody. And it was useful for us. Very good recommendation. I had lots of one-to-one meetings with different companies, bankers, IFIs, advisories, and they were talking about some problems which they have already operating here, and giving advice on the solutions which can fix all those problems. And this is a tiny thing which is very easy to do for us, since you hear the feedback. So it appeared to be very productive, first of all, for us. I hope, but I heard that it was very productive for the participants as well. So it's not probably a bad idea to have it on an annual basis, because now with the very kind of ambitious plan to be more aggressive in the next 5 years, aggressive in a good way, in a good meaning of this word, I think these 5 years created some confidence for us that we can do those reforms. First of all, it have started with the political will of the president. This is number one kind of fundamental reason for those reforms, and we are lucky to have this political will. And when we see and we can feel with our hands the first results, now we, I think, are ready to go faster, more aggressively with the next stage reforms, because they are much more difficult, but with the 100% confidence, then we can handle it. And this forum showed that there are lots of interest from international community to the business here, and this is probably the main positive result. And we from our side kind of getting recharged with energy from it, that okay, let's go. The next step is more difficult, but with no fear that we can do it, and with the confidence that now we can show some results, not after 5 years, but literally each year show real results, real deals, and which will overall kind of tremendously improve this overall economic situation in our country.
Thank you very much.